Hello, and welcome to another episode on the Move.Talk.Thrive podcast. Today I'm flying solo again, but it shouldn't be too long because you might have seen on Em's Instagram, she is with child. She has had her little baby boy, Isaac. Oh, so amazing. I am so happy for her. I said to her, you have to tell me as soon as you go into labor. I need to know so I can prepare. I was so excited. And yes, I cannot wait to have her back, but she's very much in her little family love bubble at the moment. So we are all sending her the biggest congratulations and all the love in the world during this beautiful time for her family. Today, I am going to talk to working in early learning settings as an allied health professional with the changes that are happening or the shifts that are happening in funding. I think that it is going to call for us to be working in early learning centres. So I thought it would be great for me to jump on and talk a little bit more about my experience in working in early learning centres. I have, for the past 16 years, worked in early learning centres. I was exclusively working in early learning centres with Kids Heart Pilates up until about 2 years ago. So I have really got quite a good in-depth knowledge and experience on what works, what doesn't work, the obstacles, the barriers, what they're looking for, and the rest. So I thought it'd be a good time to jump into that and share what I have learnt over the last 16 years, unbelievably. So, with that being said, I will get stuck into this week's episode.
We are child development obsessed, business besties, and mums, and we're here to spill all our secrets.
We have a combined 30 years experience working with children, and each episode we will bring you up-to-date research and evidence-based strategies to set your children up to thrive.
I'm Lizzy Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackey, Australian speech pathologist,
And this is the Move.Talk.Thrive podcast.
Hello. So, yes, I am flying solo again, but very exciting times. So happy for Em. It's just an amazing time. But as I said, I want to jump in now and just talk a little bit about early learning centre work and what the differences are and what they're really looking for and how we can provide that support. So at Kids Heart Pilates, I started in early learning centres. I actually was working in weight management at the time, and I realized that all my clients needed to go back and do like core functioning stability work, aka Pilates, before they could adhere to a walking program comfortably to then work towards their weight loss goals. Anyway, I got them all doing training in Pilates. The transformation was unbelievable. I then was having to write running programs. I started a running group because they just were so in such better functional shape to then participate in this running program or to go beyond just the walking program. So it was a really beautiful journey. One of those clients was a kindy teacher, and she was like, oh my gosh, this would have been amazing if we had have done this when we were children. And like it was skills that we had from childhood, which I couldn't have agreed more, because I was very sporty growing up, and in high school, had a range of different injuries from different sports and not being strong enough. So so very much understood that. And she said, can you come in and teach the kids Pilates? And I was like, yeah, okay, why not? That sounds fun. So I did my morning of clients in the clinic, and then I went out and worked with these kids. And it was just like, it was transformational. They ran up to me and were like, what are you doing here? I like your hair. I like your shoes. I like your pants. And I was like, we're going to do some exercise. We're going to do Pilates. And they're like, oh, my mum does Pilates. Oh, I know how to exercise. And they'd start showing me push-ups. And they were just so intrinsically motivated to move. It was unbelievable and such a contrast to what I'd seen because I had some new clients in the morning. So they were at the start of their weight loss journey and just that like zero control of their health and therefore their happiness. And just like telling them that they needed to do an exercise program, that they were all really scared to even be seeing an exercise physiologist because they thought I was going to work them really hard. And just the contrast between the two was so significant that it has landed me in this 16-year career in working with pediatrics and just becoming obsessed in pediatrics. Anyway, as I continued, it just grew with word of mouth. And one thing that I have learned through scaling my business is the different skills that we need in working in an educator setting and some of the barriers that take place in this sort of setting. So I think that whilst a lot of strategies do transfer from a clinical setting to an educator setting or an early learning setting, it really needs to be delivered or approached with the lens of a group environment, and the environment being the one that is an early learning setting. So I think that that is really, really important because a lot of the time, and the feedback that I hear when I go into centers is that the strategies that are being provided for children and to educators are ones that are clinical and are amazing if they were working or dealing with one child, but when you're dealing with a group of children, it's very different. So we need to be providing strategies that are going to work in a group environment, and that is very different to a clinical setting. So I think that's something that is really important to consider when we are working with early learning centers. So basically for the first, probably, I will say for the first 5 years, I was just an absolute sponge in the early learning sector. So I talked to educators before and after every session. I asked them what was working, I asked them what was not working, I asked them what difficulties they were having. I just threw myself in to the early learning sector. I became friends with all of these educators. I grew myself and was delivering, I think we got up to like 65 classes a week. Obviously, I wasn't doing all of them myself, but we were scaling out across chains of childcare centers. And yeah, I just absorbed as much as I possibly could. The other thing that I did was I got my mum, who is a teacher, to come in and watch a class, and she gave me some amazing strategies for group engagement, I guess, because I think something I did initially was if the kids were disengaged and playing up, I would raise my voice to be louder than them. And of course, we know from a clinical perspective, which I didn't have the experience at this time, can be quite overstimulating. So it actually just creates more dysregulation. It doesn't necessarily have the impact that we want. So I got some strategies that didn't involve me raising my voice louder. I also would go early and just observe what early educators were doing, because I think early educators tend to know how to engage children. They know how to work with a group of children. So it's very much a collaboration. And they know a lot more than they will give themselves credit for, and probably what everyone else gives them credit for. Educators are amazing, but they're very burnt out at the moment. And I think the industry is struggling at the moment with so many different things that are going on. It's potentially about to shift again and put more pressure on them. So I think this is a really important conversation right now. But the other thing I did, so I just connected with all of the educators. I watched what they were doing. I got my mum to come in and observe me and got feedback from her. I joined every single early educator Facebook group to understand what the struggles were that they were having. There's a lot of unhappy, burnt out, unsatisfied, unappreciated workers. And they air all of that in Facebook groups. So I can see that, they're complaining about working standards, they're complaining about being respected by management, they're complaining about their pay, that comes up a lot. So I feel like I just went all in for a really, really long time. I still look at it all because I can see what's going on in the sector when I'm hearing directly from the voice of those people. So I have really very much created everything that I have created for early learning centers with all of that background information in mind. Um, so I think it's one of the things I think we really need to appreciate when we're going into a early learning center is that we are not just working with the children, we are working with the educators, and we need to be providing that support for the educators. Because I guess if you look at it from a sales perspective, we don't just need the kids to be liking it and enjoying it, but it needs to be something that is worthwhile for educators. So originally I was like, I'm going to come in, you can go and have a break, because that's what I thought they wanted. And then I realized that in doing that, they weren't actually seeing the value of what I was providing. So then it's not necessary for them to be completely involved in what we're doing, but they can observe so that they can start to see what is going on for the children and which children are reacting or responding in different ways. And that will then help them in terms of their communication and their planning for those children. And then, of course, having a conversation with them and telling them about what we're observing clinically and some strategies that we're trialing and what we saw and what we would recommend that they do beyond that. I think educators are, working with kids. It is so incredibly physical. It's long hours. It's not amazing pay. And I think that they're fairly unappreciated. And if I think about it from a parent's perspective, I didn't love sending my kids to childcare centres. And I think that was just, I sent my kids to amazing childcare centres, but I think that I felt guilty at that time sending my kids, and if they were sad or they didn't want to go, it was really hard. So I, as a parent, probably didn't have the capacity to thank the educators. I feel like I would have, given that I work with educators and was working with educators, but I think that it's quite unappreciated, the role that they're taking and the load that they're doing. They're feeding kids, they're changing nappies, they're aligning everything to a curriculum. They're trying to ease the parents around that guilt that they're feeling. So there's this invisible load that educators are carrying, and I think that we need to really go in there and come as a line of support for them and talk to them about how we can support them, and that what we're doing is really supporting them. We need to have language around how we are supporting them and the outcomes that we would expect to see based on our clinical profession and opinion, and so on. So I think that we really, really need to keep in mind with educators the number of things that they're dealing with, the fact that they're dealing with all of those things that I've said, plus staffing and ratios, and really high turnover. Really high turnover. This is probably one of the biggest obstacles when it comes to working in early learning centres, because you will get a relationship and we'll have an amazing setup with a centre, and then someone will leave, and the next person comes in may not value, believe, and align with what you're offering. So you've kind of got to resell or work really hard, or you have to have a steady flow of new leads coming through, because the retention of the centres is sometimes quite low. So you have changeover, and they want strategies for, say, a term, and then they'll move on. So I think really thinking about our offering from that perspective, and the way that we're setting up our offering around that will be really helpful. I think our power comes in modeling and then follow through with communication. So I think that we really need to model the strategies that we know, and trialing them. And again, I always say this, it's about aligning expectations. So we are working on this week, and these are the strategies that we're using, and this worked, this didn't work. I want you to track this. I want you to try this. Because the power is going to come in when they're actually adopting these strategies and working with you to collaborate on what works for that group of children. So I think it's really important for us to show that and model that. And the things, some of the programs that we offer, so we offer weekly programs where we go in and model and communicate and provide strategies. And the power in that is that you're not just giving them a course or it's not an online webinar where you go, this is how we do this. It's showing them in real time with real children that have real differences in a group setting. So it's very relevant for them. And I think that everything we do needs to be relevant for them. And I think that's the missing piece at the moment in terms of what we're doing, the allied health sector are doing in the early learning space. So really thinking about what's going to work for them, and address real life, real time sort of difficulties, behaviors, with some strategies, and trialing and modeling those so that they can do them in their own time. So another thing that we do at Kids Heart Pilates is we offer intensives where we go in and we will sit with the educators, we'll really identify what's going on for them, and we provide a structure or some strategies around that. And we also obviously have online training curriculums, and we do PD sessions, so in-centre, out-of-hours PD sessions. So there's lots of different things we can do. And the one thing that I have learned over the last 16 years is that we need to be flexible in our offerings, because they will all want different things. And whilst a one set program works for a lot of them, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for them ongoing. And what works for one centre is not going to work for another centre. And it will change. It will change as it goes. So I think we need to be flexible in terms of that. So I think our role in early learning centres is there's a real opportunity. I think that we need to come in with our clinical lens. For us, that is a movement lens. We will look at how children are moving, identify if they've got motor skill differences or difficulties, if they've got cognitive skill differences or difficulties, if they've got language difficulties, if they're not following instructions, if they're not expressing themselves, if they're not, very holistic in terms. We just look at everything through a movement lens, and then we provide strategies through that same movement lens. So we will then provide movement strategies addressing all areas, but with movement. So that's very much what we do at Kids Heart Pilates. So I think it's about thinking what your lens is clinically and how you can make that relevant for educators and children in a group setting in an early learning environment. The early learning environment is very different to a clinical space. It is busy. Visually, the auditory input is like the noise levels is really, really intense in a lot of centers. There's a lot of furniture everywhere. So physical space is also something to be considered, and also will contribute to noise as well. The whole setup, the outdoor space, is there one? How can they use it? Just there are so many things to consider. And then you've got changing staff as well in a lot of centres, and how that impacts children. And I guess as far as thinking about drop off and pick up and different times and people coming in and out and different programs coming in, and just there's a lot going on. So children are going to be dysregulated. And so what can we provide from a clinical perspective in that environment that is practical and not expecting it to be a clinical environment? Because, this is life for kids. Yeah, so that is my input from my experience in learning, working in the early learning space. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Please DM me. My Instagram is Lizzy Dawson _. And I do have some in-person courses coming up in Brisbane, Sydney, and Adelaide this year. And I will be going through this in more detail and providing a lot of templates and resources in these in-person courses. It again is using a movement lens, but we're very much looking at the holistic perspective of a child and all the key areas of development. So it is not just for exercise physiologists, speechies, OTs, physios, obviously, psychs. It's all relevant to you guys as well if you're interested in using a movement lens. So I'll pop the details for those in-person courses in the show notes. And the first one is in Brisbane on the 21st of March. So if you are interested in joining, please do. I would love to have you there. And yeah, it'll be a great day. All right, guys, thank you so much. As always, please like, share, and what's the other one? Oh, Em always does the outros. Leave a review if this has resonated with you. Yeah, keep in touch. I'd love to answer any questions. All right, bye.